Nathan. I'm your host of KitaEnglish.com, and today we're going to talk about a question from one of our viewers, and her name is Dion. So Dion's question is, what should I do if a native English speaker doesn't understand me, or even more importantly, what should I do if I don't understand a native English speaker? So actually, this is a great question. The reason why this is such a great question is a lot of people ask me this question. They want to know what to do if they cannot understand a native English speaker. So I have a real quick favor. In the message section below, make sure you tell us why you think that you have difficulty understanding native English speakers. So one reason why I think people have difficulty understanding native English speakers is because of accent. Reason number one, accent. So a lot of people want to learn English, but the problem is you have people from the United States who speak American English, you have people from England who speak British English, you have people from Australia or New Zealand. And then you have places like Singapore and China who have their own special kind of English, a mix of their local dialect and accent, and as well as English. So one major reason why it's difficult to understand a native English speaker is because of accent. So let's talk about reason number two. Reason number two, native English speakers speak very quickly. Reason number two is that native English speakers speak quickly. And so if your ears are not ready to hear and understand what a native English speaker is saying, then it will be difficult to understand them. Even if they speak very clearly, even if their pronunciation is easy to understand, if they speak too quickly, oftentimes you will not be able to understand what they are saying. So let's think about another reason. Number three. Reason number three, a native English speaker can also have bad pronunciation. Now you might go, well, they're a native English speaker. They should know how to do this properly. They should know how to do this correctly. That's not always the case. So if someone does not have great pronunciation, then it will be very difficult for you to understand them. That is also one of the main reasons why native English speakers have a hard time listening to non-native English speakers. It's because of pronunciation. So it goes both ways. We might not be able to understand non-native English speakers, and non-native English speakers might not be able to understand native English speakers if the pronunciation is bad. And then number four, let's think about one more reason. Reason number four. Reason number four is reasons about the listener. One reason about the listener is the listener might be tired. So for me, I live in Indonesia, and when I try to listen to Bahasa Indonesia, and I am very, very tired, it makes it much more difficult for me to understand Bahasa Indonesia. It's harder for me to understand people who use the Indonesian language. So those are four reasons why it might be difficult to understand a native English speaker. Number one reason, their accent is unfamiliar or difficult to understand. Number two, they speak too fast. They speak very quickly. Number three, they might have bad pronunciation. It can happen. And number four, whoever is listening, the listener, might be really tired or had a bad day or is upset. A lot of different reasons. So if the listener is not ready to listen very well, it will be very difficult to understand. So what we want to do is we want to move from why it might be difficult to understand the native English speaker. Let's move to how can we work through the problem when we're talking to a native English speaker. So I have 3 suggestions, and I think they will help you out as you want to practice English with native English speakers. So how do we understand better? Or if we didn't understand, what should we do to try to understand better? So I have some hints for you guys. So first hint is be polite. Now, this one should be very easy, and it should be very self-explanatory, which means we shouldn't have to talk about it. It should make sense to us already. But when we are talking to someone from another culture or country, oftentimes what is polite to them is not what is polite to us. And so we need to learn about their culture and how to treat them so that we can be as polite as possible. Now, if you are speaking to a native English speaker, most of the time being polite means using words like please, thank you, excuse me. Being polite also means not getting too close to somebody's. They want their personal space or their bubble. And so there's things like that in Western culture that are very important to people, to be polite. So hint number 1 is start off being polite so that you can do hint number 2 and hint number 3. So hint number 2 is ask questions. Now, asking questions is very important, and we're not talking about every kind of question. We're talking about some very specific kinds of questions, and these questions are called clarifying questions. So let's imagine that we have the problem number 1 about the accent. So if someone says something to us and their accent is not very clear to us, we don't want to yell at them. We don't want to tell them, oh, I can't understand what you're saying. But we could use a question like this. We could say, do you mind repeating that again? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you the first time. So I'm going to say that one more time. We would ask them a question. Do you mind repeating that again? I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear you the first time. What we're doing is we're being polite. Do you mind? So we're asking them to do something, but asking nicely. Do you mind repeating that again? So we don't say, oh, your accent's hard to understand. Oh, you're saying it funny, but we're just asking for help. Repeat that again, please. I couldn't hear you the first time. So we explain why we are asking this again. Now, that is one type of clarifying question. Do you mind repeating this again? Do you mind saying that again, please? So if you couldn't hear it, didn't understand because of the accent or the pronunciation, you ask someone to say it a second time. Now, there's a second type of clarifying question, and this is to ask for meaning, not just to repeat, but try to get them to explain their meaning. So a second type would be, can you explain that again, please? I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So one more time. Can you say that again, please? I want to make sure that I understand what you are saying. So what is different than the first question is we're not just repeating it over, we're asking them to explain, give more details, and maybe we want them to say it a slightly different way. Can you explain that again? Can you tell me what you mean? And those are ways to ask for help without telling them that they did not give a good explanation. So one more time, can you explain that again, please? I want to make sure that I understand you. Now, for me, understanding someone and other people understanding me is the most important thing. We want to understand and be understood. That's why we communicate in English or in Bahasa Indonesia. It doesn't matter what language, to understand. So when you ask them to explain so you can understand, most people won't have a problem helping you out. Now, the first hint was be polite. Use please, excuse me, thank you. don't do things that might be offensive in their culture. Second, we talked about 2 hints. Ask someone to repeat something, and then ask someone to explain something. Now, the third hint is very important as well. We cannot use these questions over and over and over again. So imagine that every time you say something, someone else asks, can you repeat that again? Can you tell me what you mean? You say something else. Can you repeat that again? Can you tell me what you mean? That would become very annoying. That would be very difficult to have a conversation with someone. So when we use these clarifying questions, do not use them every single time you say something to someone. Only use them when it's really, really important. Because a conversation is 2 people talking back and forth. If the other person always has to repeat themselves and is always explaining themselves, then they will not enjoy the conversation. So one more time, be polite. Number 2, use the 2 clarifying questions. Can you say that again, please? Can you explain that, please? And number 3, do not overuse those 2 questions, the 2 clarifying questions. Now, what we want to start doing is we want to give you a chance to ask a question. Any question you have about how to become better at speaking English or how to interact with native English speakers. So if you have a question, send me an email at wecare@kitaenglish.com. So one more time, send me an email to wecare@kitaenglish.com. We have a website. It's www.kitaenglish.com. Check out all of our posts that have tips and advice on how to learn English better. And also check us out on Facebook. You can like our Facebook page. It's www.facebook.com/Kita English. Hey, thanks for joining us today, and I hope that these tips about what do I do when I don't understand a native English speaker, I hope it helps you out. Guys, have a good day. We'll talk to you later.